Settings, duplicate sidechain. Okay, week 3. Okay, as you noticed, there are... By the way, how many of you record your classes? Why not? That's not the reason why you don't do it. You never thought about the benefits, have you? Okay. I'm recording anyway, so if that helps, always help. Okay. There's our lesson plan. Okay. Number 1, administration. Some of this we'll do in the break. Group projects, proposals. Okay, we're starting to get sorted out on the group projects and proposals. The format. Okay, so I've posted details of the format into Moodle. So what is the format of the report? What should it look like? Okay, that's in Moodle, and for you that you can see. Okay. Case study presentations, we'll go have a look at that at the break. The presentation format, we're going to talk about that. Okay? There's two parts to the case study presentation. One is you figuring out which one you want to do. Some of you have identified the same material, a bit of an overlap, and so I would give the benefit to the group that has put their proposal in rather than the group that hasn't put their proposal in. But you can discuss and switch as you wish. I don't mind. All right? I've given you a lot of flexibility about who you are grouped with, so now you need to go into my constraints of fitting into the different weeks that we present. All right, big questions. Let's get back to why we're here. What are the big questions? Oh, now's the time to participate. You know, participation. Huh? All right. What do we mean by, in week 1, week 2, in week 1, it was all about when to source, where to source. And we talked about the factors of production of the environment affecting global sourcing. And I asked all of you to watch the Udemy video on, what was that? The 3-circle control framework. Okay, now remember, the 3-circle control framework is not the whole 12 weeks of the course. The 3-circle control framework is the part of the course, really, it's to do with maybe small firm contracting with suppliers. You with me? So when we get to week 8, 9 and 10, then we're starting to look at the big organisations, the multinationals, and they do it in a much more sophisticated way than just 3-circle framework. But they do the same thing, but they've got much more power to deal with the problems in those 3 circles. But for the small buyer that's looking for a supplier, those 3 circles are critical. And most small buyers don't have the power, don't have the knowledge to actually execute on each of those 3 circles. So whenever I'm asked to give advice, I always find out, okay, is your problem in the top circle, the bottom one, or bottom left-hand side circle? Okay, and then we focus on solving that problem. Okay, week 2, last week we talked about another innovation framework. Remember, I'm throwing frameworks at you, but also ideas about how to use that framework. So last week we had an innovation framework. Remember, we had a circle at top, then we had a diamond, diamond, and diamond. And what were those 4 diamonds? Do you remember? What was that at top? What did we call the top? Quick.
Efficiency-based innovation.
Efficiency-based. At the top, is that correct? Engineering-based.
Engineering-based.
Are you sure?
Yes, sir.
What's an example of engineering-based? What was the big example from the top? Come on, groups. Short memories. Remember, I'll give you an example. Remember that it's the Belt and Road. It was the China 2025 plan. So it's an example of government infrastructure. You know, it's government-led innovation. Okay? Government-led innovation. What was the one over here? Come on. Sorry?
Customer focus.
Yeah, customer focus innovation, all right? So we know Xiaomi, all right? That's how they do it. They don't care about making money, just grab market share. You with me here? What was over here? Efficiency-based? Kind? No, collaboration, isn't it? Collaboration-based, all right? Or efficiency-based, okay. All right. So this is the domain of the multinational and where they are at the moment. Okay, and then at the bottom, you've got the R&D based, where developed countries have got, plus, 2% investment in R&D out of the total GDP. Developing countries are sort of tend to be under that benchmark. So why did this matter? Because every company thinks about innovation, but developing countries have had a lot of help from their own governments in developing. Their own governments have actually pushed innovation, push. So you need to know, if you are sourcing from a country that's been pushed like this, maybe they don't have the, the genes to do pure R&D innovation that you might be expecting from a supplier. Maybe the suppliers need more hand-holding because of that. Are you with me here? All right? So it's something to keep in mind. And then here, a lot of this has come through VC capital. All right? VC funded. Why? Because if you get VC capital, you don't need to make money, right? Just need to get market share. All right? And then do IPO. And then the VC get their money back. Right? Okay, we know that. And then collaboration over here. Some of you are doing environmental social responsibility. Then you're over here. The whole nexus of what multinationals are doing now, they're increasingly collaborating with suppliers. Okay, so that was the framework last week. All right, what is innovative framework? Here are some questions. What are the two big trends in global sourcing? What were they?
One was the new energy vehicles.
Around the innovation framework, what are the two big trends? I did mention that there's a China 2025 plan. I think what were the two big things that we highlighted out of that? I'll give you a hint. One was what the multinationals are doing, increasingly collaborating. What was the other one? Come on.
What's it, outsourcing?
Outsourcing? That's going on, but it wasn't a trend that we identified last week. What do you think about? I think the other big one was this VC capital, driving a lot of startups, driving a lot of new business, rather than profit motive. It's just money just being poured into ideas, and we'll figure out how to make money from that later on. Okay, so those were the two big. Why are the big firms increasingly collaborating? Class, hello. What have you been doing in the last week? They're increasing collaborating because of economies of scale? Maybe. But that's not the prime two reasons why. Why are they increasingly collaborating? Why?
It's more of make or buy decision, whether they make it or buy it.
Why are big firms increasingly collaborating with their supply chain, with their suppliers? Okay? Pardon?
More towards ethics, their brand image?
Yes, possible. Okay, but what about ethics? Where are we going with that? Yeah, you mentioned ethics, but Ming is asked Ming about that. She's the expert on that. Well, interested in ethics, all right. But why are firms increasingly collaborating? Yes? Yeah, communication, faster. The faster, you get product to market faster. Okay, so they send engineers to the factory to work in the factory. And so they have turnarounds of new ideas, put it through the assembly process. They can check it 24 hours later, tweak it, try it again, tweak it, try it again, and then get a new product out in a week. But over email, it just takes forever. And then you don't know if you're going to get what you got. Okay? So that's why they're collaborating to speed up time to market. Okay? What's another reason why they're increasingly collaborating? Okay? So number one, time. Time, it's a big theme. What's another big one?
Quality control.
Time, yeah, it's more, yeah, visibility. Visibility of the supply chain. Two things. Number one, it's about some ways, and we'll talk about this later in the semester, it's about how you can just create a good relationship, because when you're collaborating, you can develop a relationship, all right? And so then it's likely you have stability in who your suppliers are over time. Okay, but also you can control any social responsibility problems that might arise. Why? Because you are on the ground. You can see that. Okay, we'll come back to that later in the semester. But I just want to let you know that the weeks we're making connections each week, and so if I was you in this class, yes, I would be doing exactly what this lady's doing and making notes. All right. See, this is a pen. All right. All right. If you don't know in this digital age. And what you do with this pen is you create little things on this paper, this other thing that some of you may not know, all right? And by the act of writing, it helps you also to remember. Yes, it does work. It really does work, okay? So I know I asked you to bring your computer, not necessarily that you can just take notes, but I do encourage you, take notes, because it helps you to draw connections from week to week to week, okay? Remember, in week one, we talked about time, remember? Remember VF Corp? What is the cost of time? Then last week, again, time has come up again and why companies are collaborating. You see, it's a theme that's coming through. You with me? So these are not 12 independent weeks as we go around that clock. Okay. So why are firms collaborating? And watch my talk on the China 2025 plan. Actually, one of you watched it. I think you watched it before last week. You watched my talk. I didn't even ask you to, but you did. And I felt so blessed you did that. Well done. Okay, all right. That was a talk I gave to a business group in Hong Kong about 18 months ago. Basically the content of last week. So if you want to go back over that and just watch it, sure, it's probably better than what I talked about last week. So what are we doing this week? 3-circle control framework. We're starting at the top circle again because we're going to look at supply challenges. What is the problem? Supply strategies. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to start with a story. Put your hand up if you'd like a story. Okay, we have a majority rule on the story. So a story is going to come. So let's go. Let's go on our... We'll come back to that in the break, the group projects. But we've got to get this story going. All right, there's our 3-circle control framework. We are starting here. We're starting at the top. Okay, just to let you know where we are. All right, so we want to start with the story. The story is called The Launch. True story. Christmas. About 3 years ago, entrepreneurs got together and they want to launch something. They want to launch a new product before Christmas. So they find this great supplier. I'll let you know who it is in a minute, but once you realise what happened, you won't believe me when I tell you who that supplier is. Okay? What are they making? They are making this fancy camera that you can put in the corner of the room and then you can then spy on people. You know what we can do with these IoT devices these days. Connect to your iPhone so you can see what's going on in your house and things like that. Okay, so this was the whole idea, and so they went to a supplier middle of the year so they can get about 60,000 of these made before Christmas. Okay, so they had a brand name and margin opportunity. There were implications for how much time you can spend on the ground and how to structure relationships. So I wanted to go through this story and what happened. There's our product. Every story needs to have a product, starting with our product. So we're all clear on the product. Okay, and you think, oh, that product would be very easy to make, I'm sure. Okay, 60,000 pre-sold. Pre-sold! That means, what does that mean? People have clicked and sent money and there's no delivery yet. Like, that's perfect when money comes in before you deliver. Wow. That's e-commerce, right? Okay, it sounds like a Kickstarter campaign. Very similar. They didn't use Kickstarter for this. Pre-sold by August 2014. Okay, huge margin, 60,000. They wanted to ship in October to get ready for Christmas. All right, it was customized. It was complicated because there's movable parts. It wasn't just a camera that didn't move. All right, it moved. Okay, all right. Mechanical housing, that's software, electronics. There was over 100 distinct operations in the assembly. What do we mean by that is 100 different steps in the assembly that things had to be put together. Okay, there's the plastic housing, there's the camera module, there's the integrated circuit, and you know where I'm going here. Okay, all right, and they selected an OEM manufacturer in China. And they were transparent about the sub-suppliers. They said, oh, here's all our sub-suppliers, trust us. And they had we'll give you a dedicated line to this client. What does that mean, a dedicated line? Well, when you go into a lot of factories, when these OEM manufacturers, they're making for lots of brand names, they may have a dozen, 15, 20 lines. In the early days, you go about 3 or 4 years ago, Foxconn had 15 lines dedicated for Apple. Then in another warehouse, secured away from Apple, they've got all these lines dedicated for Huawei and Lenovo and for all the other brands. Okay, so a dedicated line is, I'm promising this assembly line for your product only. Okay, so let's be clear what the supplier is promising. Okay, so they selected the critical component suppliers. They made sure they were good people. They had their managers in the factory. What could go wrong? What could go wrong? And they shipped in March 2015. They missed Christmas. Gone. Gone. True story. Now, what happened? Okay, the firmware development was delayed. What's that mean? The firmware is actually the programmable software. The programmable software, Jenny, is that right? That goes inside the circuit, inside the chip. Okay, so the firmware actually helps control all the electrical processes, things like that. Okay, so it's the software that's actually stuck to the circuitry that in the electronics. Many of the sub-suppliers were late in delivering parts. The job stations in the factory weren't quite ready. Okay? The job stations in the factory. So it created bottlenecks. Okay. The factory made, I crossed out something. All right? They made a famous product in the world for the last 5 years. And you think, wow, if they make this, then they'll be perfect for our product. Okay? So they thought they were really smart, okay? If a factory could do this major product, then it must be okay for our product. Okay, all right. Then they said, oh, we're launching tomorrow morning. We should have the line ready in 4 to 5 weeks to go. All right? Okay, did they get people ready? Did they practice? Did they do a run at rate? No, they didn't. What they did on the day of assembly, they grabbed people from the other line and pulled it into the line dedicated for the camera. Okay? So now you know what is the famous product they're making? GoPro. Okay? So you think, okay, if they're making GoPro, it must be a good factory, right? Right? Okay? All right? So they had a dedicated line for this customer. And they thought, oh, we'll just bring workers across in the GoPro line, bring them into this dedicated line. The night before, you don't do that. You've got to train them, and then you've got to do a run at rate. You've got to do practice. Okay? That's not all. There are component issues. Prototype versus production is a separate thing. And it was easier to make the perfect prototype, which they did, but they didn't practice enough in making the run at rate of the item. And they had electronic board issues. Testing equipment wasn't properly set up. And later on, the run at rate test of 50 boards, 39 of them didn't work. 39 didn't work. Okay, so problems of the painting system. All right, the paint supply could only make 100 per day, but the buyer wanted 1,100 per day done. All right, remember the 60,000 pre-orders. Okay, they lost their Christmas orders. They lost it. Okay, so as you can see, you'd think that, oh, if they make GoPro, then it's a perfect supplier. No, it's managing a supply chain is very operationally intensive. Okay, just because you've got a human at an assembly doesn't mean that the human knows what to do at the assembly. Okay, it needs training, you need to run at rate, you need to sequence everything. All right, there were bottlenecks, obviously the coordination problems from day one. Okay, so some more examples here. 30 of the components were bad, so I have to rework the product, which takes time. I have 20 or 30 people in my factory doing rework. Wow. Anyone that knows Six Sigma operations management, this is a death knell for any factory where you've got people doing rework. Okay, that's not value added at all. Anyone study management accounting? This is a non-value added activity. Okay, so you wouldn't even touch that. Okay, so that's our story, and true story, real. Because my friend was brought in as a consultant to fix this problem before Christmas, but they weren't able to fix it in time. Remember, 70% of most products around the world are sold in November and December each year. You do it 70%. Like you miss Christmas, you kiss your new idea goodbye until the next Christmas time. Okay? Not to mention all the pre-orders. Obviously, you're not going to get it in time for Christmas. You're going to be pretty angry as a customer. Okay? Refunds, everything. Okay, so here is the framework for last week. What was the framework for last week? Innovation framework. Here is the framework for this week. I want you to study this and think about it. Put it on your mind. This framework was developed by this crazy professor that is very, very interested in supply chains. It's me. Okay? It wasn't from a book. I didn't take it from a book. Okay? This is a framework based on my experience. And what is this framework about? Well, I want you to think about, tonight, you need to put yourself in the mind of the supplier. Why didn't I use this before? Tonight, I want you to put yourself in the mind of the supplier. Okay? And you think, okay, you have foreign customers, and they come in and then they negotiate with you. What do they negotiate? What does a typical foreign customer do? They want to give it to me for cheaper. Yeah. And then they might say, oh, we want to send our third-party quality auditor to check your production at different stages. So there's monitoring. Okay. Oh, by the way, you know, this is custom in our country, maybe USA or EU or Australia. Oh, we want you to sign a contract too. Okay, some of these are foreign to suppliers, some of these demands. Okay, suppliers, yeah, they'll sign a contract, but in developing countries, it doesn't always mean much like it means in developed countries. And many of you are aware of, put your hand up if you are aware of that. There's a couple of people. Anyone over here? Hello? Are we all awake over there? Okay, good, all right. Okay, all right. So obviously there's lots of pressure. And then, oh, by the way, the foreign entrants come into your country and start joint venturing or making products that compete with yours directly because you've been so good at making what you're making and selling locally, and that's been your bread and butter for the last couple of decades, and suddenly the foreigners come in, they're making better stuff and selling locally. Now you can't grow your local business. Now, and also the people you employ, they think, oh, I want to go and work for a foreign-owned factory because they give us better benefits, because they give Saturday off, and I can take Sunday off too. You know, I don't have to work 7 days a week. In some countries it still happens. Okay? But once the foreigners come in with new work practices, then that puts pressure on the supplier, right? Now they have to do the same, so they got pressure from training. They got pressure from training their own staff to match what foreign factories are doing. If you don't match them, your staff will leave and go to the foreign factory. And then there's product development market pressure. You have to upgrade your products. It happens. So overall, all these pressures are basically pressures on you to manage down costs. But many of you, the typical suppliers in developing countries, don't know how to manage down costs. Okay? So what I want you to do is now as a group, you have 1 minute as a group to come up with what is the 3 things you need to do to cut costs. If you go into a factory immediately, what are the 3 big things you should do immediately to cut costs? Quick, 60 seconds. Do you understand the question? Okay, at the back, are we good? Okay. "30 seconds. Come on, 3 things. Let's go fast, everyone. If you don't know it by now, you won't know it at all. So let's guess if you don't know. Okay? 3 things on the whiteboard. Now, 3 things on the whiteboard. Quick. Now, go. Go. 3 things. Go now. 3 things to do. What would you do? You go to the factory right away and you have to cut costs. What are you going to do? 3 things immediately on the board now. Hello? Come on. 3 things. Come, this is practical class, people. 3 things on the board over here. Okay, quick, up. Someone standing, please. Over here. Yeah. Okay, go. We've got 2 over here, we've got 3 over here. Okay, reduce supply, cut production costs, lower financial expenditure, no. Okay, next. outsourcing, economies of scale.
Sir, is it every group
What's
or
this?
every table?
Overwork, like
Okay,
people work
no,
more.
no, no, next.
Is it every table or every group?
Get your group list up, that's fine. Cut inefficient employees. Ah, now we're on to it. Okay, outsourced jobs.
Reorganization or remove the
In-house, wait a minute, in-house training, no. Automation progress,
duplicate positions.
yes. Remove duplication, remove duplication,
Remove duplicate positions.
no. Okay, labour costs. Remember, it's the first three things you do, okay? I know you're putting all stuff up there that will cut costs, but what are the first three things you can do immediately? Immediately? No. Yeah, sort of. Yeah, you've got to be more specific. Labour costs,
Depends on what the activities are.
yeah, scrutinise the purchasing team, maybe. Streamline ordering process, yes. Automation, no. In-house production, no. Okay, so pick out ones that I've ticked and put marks to and find out what are those big three things. Write them down. Come on, look, this one is on the right track. This one is on the right track. This one here is on the right track. Okay, come on, gather up. This is a crowdfunding exercise. We're getting... No, they're not on the right track. Okay. No. Find alternative, cheaper material. No. Multitasking workers. I don't understand that one. Outsourcing, not directly. All right, three things you can do as a factory immediately. You go into a factory, what can you do immediately? Immediately. Okay, so together, all of you you've got the answer, but none of you have got all three. Okay, so number one, this is very specific. You go into a factory and you say this to any factory owner, it's not specific. It is not specific, okay? You with me? All right? So number one, you cut inventory. Cut inventory. You don't produce any more than what is needed for an order. Okay? You make exactly what is ordered. You don't make one lot more. Okay? Right? All right. Number two, you automate. Just be careful. I crossed out automation over there. You automate the sales and administration. Okay? All right? You automate. So this is what you can do immediately. Automating the sales and administration. Because a lot of these factories, they have so many people in sales. So you automate, then you can fire them all. Okay? Now, number three is process improvement. In other words, it's going through and making improvements to the current process. And that does not mean automating the process. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get process improvement by putting a machine in there. It's about, I'm going to show you a video later how I did it in a factory and pointed out different parts of the assembly line where I suggested different process improvements. So three things you can do immediately in any factory. Okay? And well done. Look, some of you got it right. See, you're on the right track. Good. Okay, so next time, we're going to do this faster next time. All right? This is about just getting your mind together and just thinking of things and coming up with solutions to real problems, okay? So we're going to come back to that in a minute. Yes, sir?
I have a question. Isn't that supposed to be somehow related to the country where the factory is in?
Okay, so, all right, China, developing countries. Okay? All right, so we're assuming, the typical factory in developing countries, Okay, they have scope for, because the typical factory in developing countries made a lot of money by making a lot of volume. And sometimes they make more volume than what an order is, because then they'll sell the excess to their friends or sell it out the back door and things like that, okay? So they're used to just, oh, you want 2,000? Oh, let's just make 2,500 and sell the other 500 to somewhere else, but not tell our customer, you know? All right? Okay. Okay, we're going to have a break, but I just want to, what I'm going to take you through in the next break, in the next hour, is I want to show you firsthand what the challenges are for suppliers and how do you approach them for a negotiation. Now, next week, we're going to go hardcore in negotiation. We're going to go straight into negotiation. But this week, we're doing a prelim, a preview of how you would approach, why you should approach a negotiation one way and not another way, okay? So it's kind of, I'm edging you into next week by doing this, because what I'm going to do in the next break, after the next break, is just show you how, I just want to show you this, all right? We're going to show you a picture of a real supplier, okay? How many of you know these cars? Hands up if you know these cars. Okay, all right, last story, then we have a break. All right, 2 cars. Okay, one is 2/3 the price of the other. And my friend who is in charge of the Shanghai Volkswagen factory in Shanghai, one of the largest factories, motor vehicle factories in China up until about 5 years ago, they were so curious about how this car could be made for so much cheaper than its foreign buddy over here. How can they do that? So, we're going to have a break, but when you come back, I want you to figure out how the Chinese manufacturer can make this car so much cheaper and make it nearly identical to the foreign brand. Both of them are sold in China, retail price, 118, probably more now, 71. Like that's a big difference. You with me here? Big difference. How, if you were making this car, how could you cut costs? Remember? Cutting costs. Remember, part of that framework is you're under pressure to cut costs. So what are you going to do? Right? Remember the framework. What is the framework telling you? The framework says, you might copy, you might outsource cheaper materials, you might do cheaper labour, you may not do the right thing, and that is process improvement. Remember, this is one of the ways of cutting costs. This is the real way. But a lot of developing country suppliers are under so much pressure, they'll do 1, 2, and 3, they will not do this one. So have a break, you come back, and then your problem is to tell me how this car was made so cheaply at a profit. Okay, quick break, 5 minutes. Okay. Or group work. So let me just take you through. So for example, in Project 8, those that are doing Project 8, the factory visits, I'm posting videos of visits that I did in 2018 that are not even on YouTube yet, okay? And case studies for next week and the week after, there's material for those case studies here. For Project 4, the blockchain, there's one group that's interested in that, then have a look at the material I put in there for you. Project 6, Environmental Social Responsibility, I put some stuff in there on Puma for my interviews with Anne-Laure Decourt and her presentations at Sourcing Conference that I've been at. Project 2, there's a report example. Project 2 is the trade show visit. So have a look at the report examples in here. Project 7, there's material there. Okay, so there's student case examples. These are actual case examples of students that have prepared the case studies in the past. These are project examples of students that have put together projects in the past. And again, and then we've got some factory videos, more factory videos. Okay, so please do have a look at this, especially if you're associated with Project 8, Project 2, Project 4, Project 6. Okay, and one group that has chosen to look at one of the case studies next week, which group is that? Yeah, okay, so I need to talk to you about how you might approach that, okay? So we need to meet, maybe we meet tomorrow and talk about that too, if we don't have too much time today. Okay, and then I'll show you what to do. Okay, so that's great. Those doing week after, again, there are some material in the case studies for the week after. Those into week 6, when you're talking about IoT material is in one of these areas also. I did put IoT here, but it's in one of these here. Okay. All right. So think about what your group has chosen in terms of the work that needs to be done and preparation that you need to undertake. My job is not to scare you with respect to the case study undertaking. What I would ask you to do is, like your group, come and see me tomorrow and we'll talk about how you can put it together so you can do that presentation. Okay, so I'm here to help you with your presentation. I did. Look in the social media.
In the Hangout?
In the Hangout. It's in the Hangout. Okay. Okay. Can you access these folders? Yes or no?
I think the link is not in Hangouts.
I put many links in the Hangouts for the individual ones. So if you have a look at that, the links are there. Okay? And if not, we'll create another link for you. So I want you to do that. When you do a case study presentation, it would be nice if you created a one-page handout to hand out to the class. Here's an example of what one group did for a case. It's just a one-page handout summary that was handed out to every class member. So can you hand that around to everyone, please? Okay, and here's another example of this is for your case study presentations. So you create a one-page summary to hand out to the class that goes with your presentation. In the process of you creating this, then that helps get your presentation together anyway. Okay, so take one, pass around. Okay, take one, pass around. What I've also done, and if you go into Moodle, I have given you some more material in the assignments. That is, some of you are asking, what is the format of the report? If you look at Moodle, I've actually given you details of the format. How does Cherry QQ do it? All right, I'm going to ask for participation. Yes. Cheaper materials.
Like wood as opposed to steel.
Wood instead of steel in a car. All right, that's very creative. I like that.
There's an article about it. So.
Okay, all right. Oh no, I understand. Like I got this given to me the other day, and it's rubbish. It doesn't work. I charge it up, and it stops working. It's probably got sand in it. Don't worry, they put sand in these to keep the weight up because they don't want to put so much battery inside them. Ah, yeah, they do that. All right, but you're right. Put sand in there, you're talking about wood, no different. All right, maybe they can. They're using cheaper materials, but how are they doing it? How are they doing it? The answer to your suggestion is no, this manufacturer is not using cheaper materials. Okay, what's the suggestion from this group?
Subsidized by government?
Subsidised by government? No.
Sir, by reducing waste?
No.
Cheaper labor.
No.
They might reduce some features. They might reduce some features.
Wait a minute, suggestion, reduce some features? No.
They got in contact with the suppliers of the GM, and they promised the suppliers, the Cherokee manufacturer promised the suppliers of GM that they will provide more, so you provide us with the supplies.
Very. No. Yes. What do you think of that, class? What do you think of that one? The answer. You didn't put your hand up if you didn't hear it. They didn't hear you. Did you want a microphone? Loud voice, please.
So basically, the GM manufacturers, the Cherokee manufacturers reach for the suppliers of the GM and ask them to provide the same materials for them, and that they will pay the suppliers more. So the suppliers provide the same materials for the Cherokee for a higher price.
Did you get that? Did you understand that? They still don't understand.
No, it doesn't happen.
See, can you understand my problem? Okay, it's all right. It's all right. All right. So, all right. What is he? No, let's get this clear. All right. So you're saying that this manufacturer goes to the suppliers of this manufacturer and tells the suppliers to, oh, you're making a run of 100,000 for here. Why don't you run an extra, do 120,000, run more, and give us the 20,000 for marginal price? A bit far out idea, isn't it? Put your hand up if you think they did that. Hands up if you think that's a good idea. Hands up. You think it's a good idea? 1, 2. Anyone else? 3. Anyone else? Okay, all right, listen up. All right, let me tell you what happened. Any other? All right, so my friend owned a Volkswagen, so they're running Volkswagen, so they go and buy one, and they bring it back to the Volkswagen plant and pull it apart. Because they want to find how can they do it so cheaper, and they find that the axle on this car has exactly the same part number as the axle on this car. So what do they do? What's this manufacturer doing? What are they doing?
No, they're producing more and selling it.
Yeah, they go to the supplier of this car and say, oh, you're doing 100,000? Hey, do 120,000, we'll pay you marginal cost for the other 20,000. And so then the cheap axles go to this car, they put it in this car and make it cheaper. So you're right, exactly spot on. And I don't know how he knew that. You've been watching my videos, have you? Yes, he's doing his homework. Some people are doing their homework. You've got some competition at another table. All right, so watch out. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. True story. All right, let me show you one more. I said, remember, tonight is about cost. How do we manage costs? Am I right? Let's go and have a look at. What I say? What are the 3 things to? cut costs immediately in any factory. What are they? Quick.
Inventory.
Cut inventory.
Automation. Sales administration.
Cut out sales and admin. Automate. Sales and admin. And then process improvement. Okay, so here's me in this factory trying some process improvement. So what have we got here? What are we making? Actually, by the way, this factory has an inventory problem too, so I told them, cut your inventory. They had over $2 million 2 million yuan in inventory just sitting in the aisles. And that's worth between opportunity costs about 15-20% per year. Just holding it there because that money could be used for other productive things. Okay, so what are they making? These are the front end of the audio units that go into cars, right? Okay, so there's a problem. There's a problem when they get to this quality control here. And so let's have a look. I think it works. Okay, so there's a problem. There's USB going there, but an SD card goes in there, but the SD card doesn't fit in there properly. Pay attention, please. Right, see there's the QC chart. We look at the QC chart and there's a problem. What is the problem? Well, there's a major problem here where a lot of the units that get to that stage, the SD card is not going in, it's not reading properly. In other words, it's not lining up. So this is what we mean by process improvement. You've got to go onto the assembly line and look at problems. So you go and find out where the problems are because they're normally recorded in a QC sheet. And then you ask the owner, tell me the process where they're actually screwing the plastic cover onto the unit where the slot goes in for the, right? Because it's not lining up, okay? So maybe where it screws on, if that's okay, then you got to go to the part where they're doing the soldering. Okay, you know, the little slit unit where it slides in, it's got to be soldered on properly, okay? So that's what I'm going to do now. So I just want you to watch what we're doing here. Okay, and so we're looking at the problems. That's a major problem. So we go back and we find, okay, that's the slot where it goes in, but when it goes in, it's not registering electronically when they test the SD card, when you put it into the unit. And so at the back end, it's screwed into there, it's not lined up, so we've got to go and have a look at the part where they're actually doing the screwing to see how stable that process is. So now we go and have a look at the person that's actually with the screwdriver and then screwing down. Obviously, immediately, based on what I've seen how HTC and Apple and how they run their factories, they normally have a cradle that this would put on, so the guy that's doing the screwing, if they do have labour, doesn't have to use two hands. They can actually hold it in the cradle and then screw, and it doesn't move, it doesn't shake. You saw that last week with the machine. They put it into the cradle and then the machine did that for you, right? Okay, so remember, not every factory has that lovely machine that does that, okay? So you've got labour there. So what I'm telling you now is, no. The answer to saving costs or solving this problem is not replacing this person with a machine. You can still make this process more stable by having a cradle that has the perfect mould that fits in, that doesn't move while he's doing the screwing. Okay, so there's many things that you can do. You don't just automate to solve problems. Okay, so we look at that. Now let's have a look where the soldering goes on. So we go right around the other side and let's just see where the solderer is. And look what we see here. Look at him, the solderer. He's trying to juggle the unit. It's moving around as he's soldering and he's crossed his legs. Like, how can you do that? How can you do that and have that to be a stable outcome of that process over time? Okay, so you need to have a cradle for that, make it more comfortable for the solderer. You just want to, maybe that's not a problem, but you've got to minimise variance. And the only way to do that is not by big data, it's not by analytics. No, that doesn't solve anything. You've got to go with your own eyes and have a look at the actual process. And then find out how can we make things more stable, so therefore there's no variance in the outcome of that process. All right, so you don't need fancy computers, you don't need fancy machinery to improve processes in a factory, okay? Remember, this is cost management too, right? Because at the other end, you've got all that rework, that costs the factory money. You've got to cut that rework. You've got to zero that rework, that's how you save money, right? Remember, that's what we call process improvement. You all know what we're talking about with inventory. No, iPhone copies. There's your iPhone copy, okay? Copy iPhone, all right? That's rubbish too. Rubbish, okay? It just, here's another one. Here's another one, all right? That one rubbish too, okay? But look, this looked like so much like the iPhone 4. How do you know it's a copy? Well, you open it up and there's the battery, okay? There's the battery. And normally they have an antenna. Like the iPhone doesn't have an antenna. Oh, that's a stylus. But the other one has an antenna that sticks out of it. But this one's rubbish. Anyway, pass it around. There you go. All right? All right, so these are real.
iPhone 4 doesn't look like this.
It did when it was brand new when I bought it. This one's got an antenna on it. Wait a minute. That's the antenna. Okay. So that's innovation. It's innovation, right? So let's not just copy the iPhone. Let's put something on that people would like to have. You know. So they create an antenna because we think we want to have an antenna on it. So that's what they made. Yeah. See. Okay. People. Okay, remember. Okay, why am I showing you all this? I know, we're having a bit of fun. I'm showing lots of pictures, lots of examples. Remember, the next 3 weeks is for the little guy. It's for the little person, right? Not the MMC. You understand this, all right? It's just for you and me. If we want to go out and then start sourcing to sell on Amazon as a solopreneur, you with me here, all right? And then in 4 weeks' time, then we'll get into the multinational and how they do it. You with me? All right? Whereas a traditional global supply chain management course will only focus on the multinational. Okay? Do you understand that? No, just talk about all their rules and procedures and how they do things perfectly. Well, I think it'd be a bit boring to spend 12 weeks talking about that. So that's why we're talking about the little guy, we're talking about the little person, we're talking about you and I that go and wants to contract with someone in a developing country. These are the problems you're going to come up against next week. How do you negotiate? How do you negotiate with a supplier when you haven't got a team of lawyers to go into bat for you? You know what I mean? All right? That's what next week is about. So very powerful like that. All right? Look, how do we know that suppliers are having challenges with costs? Well, what I asked was, what is your number one challenge? How are you responding to that challenge? That's what you would ask if you go to the trade show. You go and talk to suppliers. What is your number one challenge? How are you responding to that challenge? Just 2 big questions. So look at this. Here we go. April 2015, competition, cost control, innovation. All right? Let's have a look at, here we have competition, cost control. What are the component types? We're talking about electronics, okay? Cost control and technology innovation. That's the bigger circle of the previous one. Okay. What about the response? The response to cost control mainly is to try to control costs here. Here is to try to improve quality, okay? And many times, and remember I've interviewed thousands of suppliers and asking them, it's not about what their big challenge is how they're responding to that. Often suppliers, and this is the article for next week, published in Industrial Marketing Management, often suppliers will respond by what you put up on the board. Okay, outsourcing. Okay, let's avoid the problem. Oh, let's work on our relationships. Let's avoid the problem. All right, let's do everything but try to improve the process, which is the only sustainable way to deal with costs. Let me repeat, the only sustainable way to deal with costs is to improve the process. But most suppliers are not doing that. They are focusing on, oh, let's develop a relationship. So, oh, let's just get double the volume order from a raw material supplier so then they'll give us a discount. That doesn't change the inefficient process. You with me here? All right. And so a lot of suppliers have been avoiding that. Very few of them say, oh, we need to improve quality. And that is, focusing on the process. So we improve the quality. That's the only way to sustainably improve the cost management. So, wow, are all suppliers telling you this? Well, not all of them. Maybe just 12 are saying it out of 95. Like, it's just a small percentage. And others are saying, well, we've got to focus on getting more volume going through the factory, and then our costs control will be spread out over a greater number of volume per unit, and so therefore we can still make money that way. Or that negotiation, with our raw material suppliers. Or we try and no solution, some of them saying, we don't know what to do. All right. So, and then I talked to all of these suppliers in Guangzhou. And what is your big challenge? Number one, managing their talent. Here, lowering the labour costs, trying to reduce the labour costs. Trying to reduce unnecessary temporary employees, which cost money. And here, saving labour costs and low quality HR, invest in high quality HR. Wow. So, these are interviews I've done. Now let's go to 2016. And what is the biggest challenge? Competition, then cost control. Again, poor economy, right? The poor economy came in 2016. Went throughout China and a lot of other developing countries around that time. All right, so competition, cost control, poor economy, there it is there. And so how are you responding to that? How are you responding to cost control? Well, 3 out of 28 are trying to improve quality, but 6 of them had no solution, and 5 of them are trying to work on a relationship. How do you work on a relationship? They're trying to, if they have a better relationship with the raw material supplier, look, can you get a bit cheaper? Can you do this for me? Can you try this? You with me here? That's not sustainable. Okay, all right? So what in this article that we set for next week in Industrial Marketing Management, we talk about how suppliers are responding in terms of a management way, in terms of scale economies, in terms of strategy and marketing, or they just have no solution. Like the best way to respond is in terms of management, just dealing with managing the process and managing the process better. That's a big thing I want you to take away from all of these interviews. Wow. And we can go on and on and on. I can show you thousands of these graphs. Toy and game exhibition. What is their number one challenge? Well, 18% competition, cost control. Okay, poor economy. You can see that cost control is at the forefront of a lot of these Chinese suppliers. I would ask those from India, Bangladesh and Pakistan, would you think you would get a different response than what I've been getting here? Anyone? Do you think this is a China thing, or do you think it's a developing economy thing? Hands up, it's a China thing. Hands up if you think it's a developing economy, like it's not just China, it's more than that. Okay, all right, okay. All right, so I just want to show you there's lots of graphs there. There's lots of graphs there in what I talked about. Of course I've showed you some videos, so I don't want to bore you too much. Next week our group here, you're going to probably talk about the 2 smartwatch manufacturers, okay? And so we've got detail for that. Like you can choose another one if you want to, and then the week after, then there's to speaker manufacturers, that is HOT and XKL. Interesting, this video of XKL, it's on YouTube. It's actually the most viewed video I have on YouTube. I think it's about 130,000 views of this one. It's just, I don't know why people think it's good, but it's fun to watch. All right, lots of problems. Okay, so that finishes that. What's the takeaway from that? I just want to show you with that PowerPoint slide that you have access to, that is week 3B, we just have lots of evidence there that emerging market suppliers have they have cost pressure. And why do you need to know that? Because if you are aware of that, the last thing that you are going to do as a buyer is, oh look, could you just take 10% off for me? You know, I really need it for the market. Can you make it a little bit cheaper? Okay, like, what are they going to say to you when you do that? As a buyer, there's a negotiation for next week. What is the supplier going to say to you when you say, look, can you make it cheaper for me? Do you think they'll say yes?
No.
Maybe they'll say yes. Maybe they'll say yes. But do you think you'll get what you're paying for? No, you won't. All right? So unless you're going to be watching that supplier 24/7, the last thing you should be doing is trying to bargain for a cheaper price. Okay? All right? There are other approaches that you need to be aware of when you are negotiating. And so we're going to do that next week, okay? That's very, very important in global supply chain management. All right? Any questions on what I've just covered there? Right? Remember, what is the framework for tonight? Was that competitive market framework? Okay? What does it mean? It's just to show you that if you put pressure on a supplier, you're going to get stuff like this going on. That is, they try and do a deal secretly with another factory to get cheap component. Well, it's not cheap, but cheaper components into the car that you got them to manufacture. All right. Let's have a break for 5 minutes. Break. Then we come back. So what was the big theme tonight? Cost, exactly. Cost. It was the big theme. Okay? And seriously, it's on the mind of every factory owner. All right? And we know that from all the surveys I did. Okay? We're talking about thousands now. Okay? And you'll find that too when you go and do your field interviews. What is your biggest challenge? Cost is going to be in there. Maybe competition, maybe how to get more sales, but cost is going to be in there. Okay? What was the big framework that we used today? What was the big framework I introduced you to? Remember? We've got information and framework. Well, you have a framework so you can help organise your information. What was the big framework? The competitive manufacturing model. That is, Chinese suppliers are under pressure. They're under pressure. Really, at the end of the day, they're under pressure to save costs. Most of them take a shortcut to save costs. It's not sustainable. How do you get sustainable cost control? By change in process improvement. So next week, when we go into negotiation, what do you think we're going to focus on? Getting a price or doing what? We're going to focus on how we can help the supplier manage their costs, if we care about costs. If we care about quality, we're going to focus on how can we help the supplier improve their quality. Wow. Should we do that? Well, you have no choice, because at the end of the day, once you pay some money, you lose control. You give control to the supplier. So you can say what you want and demand what you want at negotiation, but you don't have power at the end. So you've got to keep that in mind. That's what we're going to talk about next week. Okay? All right? Remember, what you're learning this week, next week and after is for the little guy. Okay, not the multinationals. They have teams galore, procurement teams, lawyers, to protect them from anything. And you know what I mean? So what they do may not be efficient anyway. How do you know? You know, because there's so much bureaucracy and you do it their way or it's a highway. You know, the suppliers just have to comply because they just want volume orders. You with me? All right? What does that teach you about supply chain management? You know, Apple does it this way. Well, wow, everyone should do it the way Apple does. No, everyone cannot do it the way Apple does. Why? Because everyone doesn't have the lawyers that Apple does. You with me here? All right? So there's not much point in me just telling you about what the big MMCs do. Okay? All right? We've got to think about human to human interaction. Okay? In the supply chain. And so I think you'll learn 10 times more as we approach it this way.